All right. Good morning. Before I take some of your questions, I'd like to make some brief remarks regarding our One Baltimore initiative. Many of us were saddened and disappointed and angry by what transpired 2 weeks ago. But like many of you, I am resolved to transform this into an opportunity to make our city stronger. I'm committed to the belief that we must look forward and not backward. This was a difficult time for our city, but I'm confident that the decisions I made were the right decisions, given the information that we had at the time, because of the actions that I took through the curfew, through the National Guard request, and managing the situation both before and after we had state intervention. The overwhelming majority of the demonstrations were peaceful. There was no loss of life in Baltimore City as a result of the protest. And the riots were limited to a few hours on one day. All of the officers who responded did a masterful job of responding and keeping order, peace, and calm. And that's both the police officers, the firefighters, the EMS, all of our first responders responded to these incidents with distinction. Of course, I just want to be clear, I never gave any officer the order to stand down. Our officers and the officers from throughout the region who joined in the response showed an amazing amount of restraint and should be commended for it. Had their actions been different, the outcome of that Monday could have been substantially different. I'm focused on looking forward and on rebuilding my city. For those of you who wish to look backward, the record is clear. The actions were the right steps to take. The actions were the right steps to quickly restore order and calm to our city without loss of life. Now, I think it's time to turn our attention to doing more to help those who are in need. We cannot let the reckless actions of a small percentage of Baltimore slow the momentum that we have in growing Baltimore, rebuilding our neighborhoods, attracting new investment, and creating jobs. I have visited communities all over our city, talking to schools, impacted business owners, neighborhoods, and community meetings. What I have seen is the resilient spirit of our city wherever I have gone. And I'm so blessed to be the mayor of a city with so many partners and so many community members who want to help, who are willing to step up and move our city forward. Today, I'm very pleased to announce the chairman of our efforts to bring these partners together through our One Baltimore initiative, Michael Cryer. Michael is no stranger to complex issues facing our city and our state. His experience in the city dates back to the days of former Congressman Perrin Mitchell, for whom he worked as a driver and a special assistant. Michael played a key role in moving the EBDI project forward. He was closely involved in the Exelon Constellation Energy deal and was an architect of the former mayor's Believe campaign. And I could go on and on and on about all of your experience. He is the former chairman of the State Democratic Party and board chair of the Associated Black Charities, and he is the current chairman of the University of Maryland Medical School's Board of Visitors. He's also a graduate of City College and Morgan State University. And Michael is a longtime resident of Baltimore. When we were looking for someone with the breadth of experience, contacts, and vision to champion One Baltimore, someone with the capacity and the passion for rebuilding Baltimore, Michael's name was at the top of my list, but not just my list, of many others. He is certainly the right choice to ensure One Baltimore initiatives moves us forward with a common and sustainable agenda. We have to get this right. We need a coordinated and overarching effort to leverage all of this energy, financial support, and goodwill. Michael will help us to focus on the immediate needs of repairing businesses and communities damaged over the past 3 weeks, and more importantly, he will coordinate our partners across the city to advance collective solutions to systematically promote Baltimore as an inclusive and competitive city. This is about more than government. This is a once-in-a-generation effort to begin to attack these systemic inequalities that impact all areas of our city, all aspects of our city. This is a multi-year effort. This is not a one-time Band-Aid. We know that these problems did not occur overnight. We also know they're not going to be solved overnight. In the coming days, Michael will work with us to form the structure of One Baltimore, including a steering committee and subgroups that will focus on specific identified areas. Some people have suggested that we call Michael our One Baltimore Czar, or some other fancy title like that. But those of you who know Michael Cryer understand that he's not much for fancy titles. He is always focused on just getting things done. Thank you, Michael, for agreeing to take the lead on this critically important work in the mission for our city's future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank you, first of all, for your confidence in me. This is not an easy challenge, but I do look forward to it, and I'm confident that working together, we'll get it done. There's a moment now in Baltimore where people from all of our communities are joining together and are insisting on a dramatic and non-trivial change in the direction of our city. This is a rare opportunity for the citizens of Baltimore to take the lead in crafting and implementing an agenda for reform that could set the stage for a national conversation on the value of equal opportunity in contemporary America, particularly those parts of our country that have been riveted by concentrated discrimination and indifference. One Baltimore will harness the many strands of assets, resources, commitments, and work, and to see that they're all connected. It will serve as a central point of contact and coordination to weave together all of the many efforts underway to strengthen our city. The underlying causes of the uprising of 2 weeks ago are the result of a tangled and multi-generational history of state action and community indifference. Although the precipitating events are related to policing and criminal justice, it is clear that many other areas of community life are indeed implicated: education, housing, social policy, and economic development. Accordingly, our response to these issues must avoid the temptation to rely on one or two silver bullets. Rather, our response will require short, medium, and long-term initiatives that are based on the expressed priorities of the affected communities and are grounded in evidence and best practice. In this vein, it is imperative that the call of many members of our community for an immediate investment in and commitment to an expanded summer jobs program be heeded. We are confident that with the help of business, educational, and community partners, we will be able to meet the demand. So today, we're announcing an effort to be led by One Baltimore to increase by 50% the number of summer jobs offered to high school youth this summer. Expect to hear more about renovating or reopening some of the recreation centers that may be closed or in need of repair, and other efforts to make safe play available to more children. These moves are not the end of our efforts, but a first step, a down payment, if you will, or an additional efforts aimed at long-term structural reform. In the medium 1 to 2 year term, we believe that there are tangible initiatives and meaningful reforms that can be made in addressing the plight of our disconnected youth and young adults who are not employed or in education or in training. However, in the long term, we believe that truly changing the trajectory of our community will require a comprehensive plan with multiple but complementary priorities, sustained effort and investment, and scrupulous and continuous self-evaluation to ensure that progress is being made and appropriate and timely course corrections are made. One Baltimore and all of our efforts citywide will only be effective if we all are committed to listening and learning with humility and openness to each other and to the voices of those who are too often left out. Beginning today, I will be reaching out to leaders and members of various sectors of Baltimore to hear their ideas, concerns, and how best to work together. I'm especially interested in listening to the voices of young men connected to the world of experiences many of us simply don't understand. I am committed to doing my very best to make steady progress, to be inclusive, to push against the status quo, and to move Baltimore, to move our city, to move One Baltimore in a direction that we all desire. Thank you, Mayor.
With that, we will open it up to questions, and again, Michael, thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Cryer, you said it during your speech, and it's been discussed many times since the announcement of One Baltimore last week, as a comprehensive public-private partnership to fix the systemic issues. What does that look like in the real world? Is there any type of example that you could give to help us better understand that?
I think so. First of all, this is an example. This is not a commitment or a program.
Fair enough.
Is that fair?
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. We have a number of industries with significant supply chains. How do we dare to suggest that we inject, interrupt, disrupt those supply chains to see if there's a possibility of creating work locally? I think that's a worthwhile conversation. If we discover that we can't, well, we'll figure out if that's true. But that's worthwhile discussion. It is not simply a matter to see whether or not the jobs or the interests that are available are already in the pipeline. If we're going to change the trajectory, we're going to do something that's different. We're going to think differently. We have to be willing to challenge what we think is the understanding. In some cases, if the decision about what's available is an afterthought, if it's based on philanthropy, then we know it's not going to make the long-term commitment that we've got to make. So that's just an example. So don't hold me to it as a plan, but I will not be afraid to pursue it as a possibility.
Of course.
Is Under Armour involved? Have you spoken to them?
I've not spoken with them directly. I am so brand new, team, that I will tell you that getting a phone and a desk will be my first priority.
But that would be
I've spoken to them. I've spoken to them.
Yeah.
all right.
So basically, for example, not putting you to this,
Thank you.
there are jobs available, and the conversation would be on how to best get the jobs to the places where they're needed. For
Yes,
example.
For example, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Where is there already funding in place or funding coming to reopen these rec centers or to generate these summer jobs? Is that already something for the short term? Is the money already there?
So with respect to recreation centers, we have a recreation center plan that has already built the first new recreation center in more than 10 years. And that capital plan is planning for the recreation of the future. We shouldn't be afraid to have these conversations, not about what we had in the past, but how do we suit the needs of today and moving forward. There are very few places around the country that had our old school model of recreation. At the time where the recreation centers were created, when everyone says, oh, we had X number of recreation centers, we also were a much larger city. The transportation options weren't the same. People didn't move throughout the city in the same way that they did. The school choice didn't exist. Now we have school choice at the high school level, at the middle school level, and people move throughout the city a lot differently. We also know the state-of-the-art recreation center isn't these little neighborhood centers, but these larger centers that people want to go to, that offer the type of amenities that are attractive in a financial model that's sustainable. And that's our plan. Like I said, we opened the first new recreation center in 10 years in Morrill Park. We're going to be breaking ground on 2 more in Cherry Hill and Cahill this year, and more to come. The funding is on the table of the city council right now. There's a bill that's languishing in the city council that would put between $40 to $60 million in additional capital funding for recreation centers to build new and to significantly rehab other centers. And I'm just waiting for that bill to have a hearing so we can discuss how to even put more money on the table. I think it's difficult for us to have the conversation with philanthropists or foundations that want to support our recreation centers when we have, between $40 to $60 million just sitting there on a table and we're not taking action on it. I encourage the council to move forward with that bill so we can put that money on the table and leverage those resources to get even more support from the larger community.
But in the short term, a lot of these neighborhoods are still screaming that their centers are closed, and they want, some.
And what I will say to that is, we are taking a look at those areas that are underserved when it comes to recreational facilities. And we're working with the Department of Recreation and Parks, as well as the Police Department, to look for ways that we can do pop-up recreational opportunities throughout the summer. So we can, just like we do with the virtual supermarket, when we put in food deserts a virtual supermarket, it is our plan to continue to do that and expand that this summer, to look for more ways to do the mobile recreation and these pop-up opportunities.
Mayor, if you look at the city's budget over the past 16, 17 years, the inflation-adjusted spending by the city on recreation and education is actually down, as it was from levels in 1998. It's budget time. Once again, the police budget is going to get a hefty increase. That obviously over this time, because of the time, emphasis, et cetera, is up substantially. Are you looking both in the short run right now, because you're in the budget process, but then in the long run about perhaps repurposing some of the money? You only have a limited amount of money. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
So part of it is about cutting the pie differently, and some of it is about expanding the pie. When it comes to recreation, you know, I can understand why the recreation spending has been flat, or if you're saying adjusted to 98 down, because there really hasn't been that focus and a strategic plan for how to move recreation forward. That's why when I became mayor, that's one of the first things I did with respect to recreations, to go to the community and say, what does the future of recreational programming, what does the future of recreation look like to you? So we could form that map together, that path together. And that's why, having done that review and made that capital plan, and even made programmatic adjustments, we're in the position to look for that additional resources for how we can expand capital. When you expand the capital and you create new, that also coincides with operational increases. But you know, those things go hand in hand. With respect to educational things, you know, one of the things I can say that we talk about constantly with Dr. Thornton, our school CEO, is how we can put more resources into the classroom, how we can adjust our spending to have a bigger impact on our young people, both in school and out of school. And you should know that I'm very committed to working with the school CEO to not just to continue those conversations, but to get that work done. We are looking for additional ways to support the school system during this budget season.
Have you told your budget folks to look at the current budget and look for ways that you might be able to get additional money into these other arenas?
You know, and I will say that we've been having those conversations before this incident occurred. You know, the capital plan for how we can improve recreational opportunities, that's work that has long been done and will continue to do. The conversations about schools and additional resources, we've been having those conversations. Do they have a new meaning now after the recent events? Of course they do, but this is work that has been ongoing.
How do you ensure sustainability when you talk about One Baltimore? I know former mayors have said that that has been something they've struggled with once they leave office. How do you ensure that this won't be a similar situation?
Well, I don't know if any other mayors tackled this issue in this way. This is about systemic change and bringing all of the resources that we have in Baltimore. If you take a look around at Baltimore, we have incredible universities. We have, you know, not just world-class institutions, but world-class foundations. We have communities that you saw how, without provocation, they jump in and want to be a part of solutions. The goal of One Baltimore is to harness all of that in a conversation about what direction we actually want to go into, and making sure that we're not being redundant, we're not being wasteful, that we're being very intentional about how we support our communities and how we create systemic change. It has to be one conversation, and it has to be rooted in the needs of the community, and with the community at the center, being the voice of how we move this forward. And you know, having someone like Michael that has the long community ties and the respect of so many across all those sectors that we're bringing together is helpful and essential into making that a sustainable change.
Yeah, may I add to that? Thank you. The issue of sustainability is critical. it is easy to put money into something that has great flash and satisfies us for a moment. But in 5 or 10 years, you've got an empty building, or you don't have the resources to sustain that. That's a blemish we don't want to incur. So I think it's going to require discipline. It's going to require the kind of strategic thinking long-term, both about the issue, the vision, as well as the allocation of resources. And so there are some cases where it would be attractive to do something that would be immediately satisfying. It'll be more important to say whether we think that's doable long-term. And that's a financial issue, and it's a matter of political and just straight-up courage.
Mr. Michael. Last question. How much does the private sector play into this? Because as we talk about jobs being a major role, we mentioned Under Armour, and we mentioned listening to these communities. But what about listening to the private sector to say, here's where we can hire, here's where we may need these jobs? Can you talk a little bit about how you plan to do that, how many businesses you need to be a part of it, that kind of thing?
Let's begin with the annual meeting for the GBC 2 nights ago. In that one meeting, they raised over $200,000 for these kinds of initiatives, for One Baltimore and the mayor's effort. I'm sorry?
The business
and
recovery.
For the business recovery, correct, I'm sorry. I'm meeting Friday morning, 8 o'clock with Don Fry, and beginning a series of conversations with people throughout the business community, many of whom have already expressed very specific indications of what they'd like to do. Others, gratefully, are asking what they can do. And in some cases, I've had people to say, Michael, just tell me what you need. And I've said to them, please hold that. I will tell you, but I'm not going to waste it by having you trying to capture a few dollars from you now before we know what we're doing. Hold that. And in most cases, and frankly all the cases, they've appreciated that. Because usually if you're in fundraising and somebody says, I want to write a check, you get the check before you let them get away, right? But I think truth matters, and I think the business community respects as much or more than anything else being honest and being methodical and procedural.
Can we just ask one question about the current situation with the crime situation, Mayor? If we could just ask you to address your, there's
Thanks,
been
Mike.
some police officers that have been quoted as saying they're, afraid that worry, essentially. We're hearing kind of anecdotally that some people are having a hard time getting police response. Can you kind of address all of that?
I'll say this, we know that we have, the past few weeks have been hard on our city as a whole, our first responders included. You have to understand that these officers who are sworn to protect our first responders, whether they're firefighters or EMS, who go to work every single day, putting their lives on the line to protect the citizens of our city, were pelted with rocks, with bricks, with other things, and that does not happen without its impact on the morale of these officers. The officers have been working excruciating hours, the first responders across the board. That does not happen without having an impact. We know that there's been an uptick, but there's also an uptick from the community in their understanding and their willingness to be the partners that we need right now to have the type of safe communities that we want. And what I've heard from community members is what can I do to help support our police department? What can I do to help support our firefighters? Because we know that they're having a tough time right now, and we want to be in partnership. And it's going to take that type of community spirit for us to get through this. We have had upticks before, and we have addressed them, and I have every confidence that we will address this uptick as well. My hope is that we look at this, the tragic events of the last few weeks as an opportunity to double down on our commitment to having a safer city, but also double down on our commitment to doing it in partnership with the communities, because that's what it's going to take. The communities supporting our first responders and our first responders, doing what they do every day to make our communities safe. Thank you very much.